Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we will be taking you through, and I will be taking you through 7 new decks for the upcoming expansion. We will focus on one deck for each of the champions, so whichever one of them is your favorite or you're most excited about, we will have a deck for you right here. And then also there are some more decks built around some different things. Some decks kind of, have built themselves. Some decks not so much. And yeah, we are going to show you some pretty exciting ones, I think. And some ideas are a bit zany and a bit out there. And something I'm sure that you may not have thought about, but may be pretty excited to play once I show you. So I am having to do this on out of cards. Mobalytics doesn't have the new cards up yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a out of cards link to the deck. I'm going to leave a decode link when that is available to me, and I'm going to leave a Mobalytics link once that is available to me as well. So, and that's for each of the decks. So if you go down into the description, there will be, as soon as I can get those things, they will be there. So initially they'll just be the out of cards, then probably the Mobalytics, then the deck code will appear as, and I'll update the description as I get access to it. But this is our first deck, and it is Zoe. Now, what's interesting about these 3 champions that I have seen, that have come out, of course, is that I would say, kind of in a weird way, the best way to play them is to not go all in on them, because I don't think any of them are strong enough or consistent enough as a whole to go completely like I'm gonna play in on them. For Zoe and Viktor, I think that they're not consistent enough themselves. For Riven, I think that it's her package around her isn't consistent enough or good enough itself, and so it's left me in a kind of spot where for each of them, I know some of you might expect a Zoe Viktor deck. Personally, I don't think that that is where they are best suited, and I wanted to show you decks where I think, they can still shine in their own way, but, it's not quite the all-in synergies, because I don't think that that sort of Zoe Viktor augment deck is quite there. And so this instead is something completely out of the blue, you might think. It is a Targon P&Z elusive deck. And you might think, what? And it is a bit of a weird way to go with Zoe. But essentially, it's kind of a tempo aggro deck that, also gets to utilize Teemo. And essentially, it's just a bunch of elusives that, can then hopefully deal a lot of damage to your opponent. And we have some good elusive options in these colors. Obviously, Pyro Cannon is kind of a pretty good card. It's appeared in multiple good decks. So it obviously gives us the chance to get 2 Daring Pyros. And, because of the way this deck is kind of built, we can, discard some things as well. We have plenty of card creation for Zoe, potentially, if we can level up. We have Slaughter Soldier just because it's a very good 1-drop, very good to drop on turn 1, deal 3 damage. We have 2 Spacey Sketches, which, can give us a Celestial card, which, could be the elusive, could be the 4-1, could also be the Challenger and help us get some removal as well. We're running a 2-of Spell Thief. Why would we do this? Well, it's going to give us either a good discard target, or, if we're playing a deck that is also kind of aggro, it could give us just a very good spell to choose from, and I think it's just a pretty good card in general. As the game goes on, this kind of deck is not going to have much to do with its mana, so Spell Thief will give you something to do, right? We've also got Teemo, an elusive, good aggro champion in general, I think, and the same with Zoe, an elusive, who will often strike, and, if we ever can, get those Nexus strikes and then, start using the super cool star charts and, potentially just create more cards and more chances for us to go. Ballistic Bot, I think, is a pretty crazy card. I actually think this is probably one of, if not the strongest cards that was released. And it's kind of been forgotten about because it was kind of early on. But I do think that this will be one of the cards that you see most often. And obviously, giving us the ignition, 1 gives us more discard targets, right? But also it can just deal damage to face. And with Augment, obviously this can become quite a threat in itself. We also have Lunari Shadestalker, which, you know, when we're talking about using like Ignition or, you know, Spell Thief or whatever, enabling Nightfall shouldn't be too hard for this deck, so that's a 2-3 elusive for us right there. We have Mountain Goat, again, solid unit. Obviously giving gems to our elusives is pretty good if they can connect. We have Mystic Shot, Pale Cascade, the usuals that get excited. Again, we've got plenty of discard targets. Mentor of the Stones, of course, pretty nutty with elusives if they can't deal with them. It's pretty nice. Neandroid, I think, in this deck could become absolutely crazy. We have, you know, quite a bit of card generation. You know, Pyroganon is another example of card generation. And so, you know, if the attack of this Neandroid can get up to, you know, 5-6, we could look at a very big finish right there. And then 2 Submersible as well, because playing 10 different card names shouldn't be too hard for this deck, I don't think. And, you know, a 5-mana 5-5 elusive that draws a card, that's pretty good. So yeah, that's the deck in whole. Where do I think this deck will land? I don't think this will be, you know, the most competitive deck, but I did want to, you know, show off Zoe in a way. It's not all in Zoe, so I am a bit sorry for that. But I think if I was building, if you were like, Chris, what's the best thing you can do with Zoe that is, you know, at least somewhat synergistic with what she's trying to do, I would give you this, because I think that is probably the case. I don't think this is, you know, super competitive. I think it's okay. Against certain decks it will struggle, but against others it would probably dominate them because of elusives. You know, if you're playing against like They Who Endure, this deck would win almost every game, I would think, against that kind of deck, because they don't have many ways of dealing with elusives, right? And so yeah, I think that it would probably have a very polarized matchup table, but it wouldn't be terrible. It wouldn't be terrible whatsoever. And also, you know, it is, I think, the best way to kind of, you know, still keep Zoe in a deck that kind of is sort of built around her, but isn't all in on Zoe, because I'm not quite sure that can work. So on to our next deck, and now we come to Viktor. And again, it's not quite all in Viktor like I'm sure some of you would want, but I do think that this is where Viktor will shine, and if he is going to find a home, I do think that this is the kind of deck where you will see him. It's actually a Targon Allegiance deck, and our only splash is Viktor. I put him as a 3-up because, you know, it's like, you got to include Viktor, right? What's the deck trying to do? Well, essentially, we are a, pretty simply, we are a Targon Allegiance Invoke deck. That uses the Daybreak units, you know, with Leona as well, and Raven, to essentially help us get to the late game, and then we can drop either Asol or, you know, obviously one of our big Celestial units, and essentially win the game that way. So we do have Mountain Scryer as a 3-of, and with Mountain Scryer, we also have Viktor, who of course, once leveled up, will then give us a discount on all of our invoked cards, which means that you can often and will get double discount on all your Celestials, and, you know, you'll be able to play big, horrendous, you know, creatures that your opponent is going to struggle to deal with because they have Spell Shield and all that. It's going to play those cards on turn 6, turn 7. Long before they should ever be allowed to come down, and hopefully by that point you've invoked a couple times as well, increasing their attack, and you're going to smack them in the face and hopefully win the game. That's essentially the point. Viktor in this deck kind of acts like an extra 3 copies of Mountain Scryer, but with a better stat line. And, you know, obviously the potential to gain keywords as well. That's what he is in this deck, and I think it's a really good fit. It also works with like Raven Daylight Spear, the card that he will create. Viktor will also get, you know, give that a discount as well. And I think that this kind of deck, you know, we've seen Targon Allegiance be, you know, pretty competitive actually, recently as well. So it would not shock me in the slightest if this deck, you know, turned into like a deck that really was quite competitive. And I think that's where Viktor can come in and essentially just act as extra Mountain Scryers, which is a crucial unit in this deck, and, you know, just give you the chance of going in. And again, it's a deck that isn't built around Viktor, but this is a deck that will level up Viktor, I think, somewhat easily. And so for that reason alone, I was like, well, this is enough for Viktor to, you know, sort of shine. And, you know, if you give him elusive as well, his attack can go up the roof, and we can really start flying with Viktor. So I think this is a really cool deck, and I hope you agree. Next up, we have my take on a Riven deck. This is Riven Taric, which I don't believe is the strongest way to actually play Riven. The strongest way I would guess to play Riven would be to replace Ezreal with Riven in the, you know, Ezreal Draven deck, but just swap out Ezreal, put in Riven, probably take out the Static Shocks, add in, I don't know, more solid units or whatever, or more discard even, you know, or more burn, and that is how I think this champion will be. You know, that will be the tier 1 deck that you see Riven in, but I thought that was a bit boring, to be honest, to say, you know, oh, just swap Ezreal. I thought that'd be a bit boring. So instead, here is Riven Taric, which is probably, you know, the first deck I will play. I think most people are pretty excited for this deck. It's very interesting and kind of different, and, you know, something that we probably haven't seen before too much of, and that's why it's probably pretty exciting. We have, you know, some of the usual suspects, like Mountain Goat and Mentor of the Stones, of course, synergize really well with this kind of thing. And we are essentially a tall deck, to borrow a term from Civilization, in the sense that, you know, instead of going wide, we're focusing on specific units and keeping those units alive, you know, kind of similar to Lee Sin, and then using those units to essentially win us the game. We also get to sub in Arrow the Tracker. I have no idea how good this card will be. I assume it will be okay, but I really don't know if it will be amazing, but I think it will be okay. And you know, we have some really good options. Obviously Might, you know, obviously if Taric comes down and gives Riven, like, you use Might on both of them, that's obviously a massive shift. Kato, of course, is more support in the support style. Obviously Mentor with these cards as well is obviously somewhat crazy if you can get that attack off, you know, with Taric as well. And essentially you're just gonna, you know, create those spells, using stuff like Bastion to keep them alive, or, you know, Guiding Touch or Pale Cascade. You know, you've got the tricks to keep them alive as well, and then you're just gonna smack them in the face, hopefully for, you know, one massive swing with a Might with leveled up Riven. And obviously if you can give them the sword, if you can give Taric the sword with Riven next, oh my god, like, that is obviously the dream. And I mean, outside of, you know, Vengeance, that would be, you know, it's the dream. It's the dream. And we'll pretend that, you know, no one's running Vengeance and no one's running Ruination, which they shouldn't be, because obviously everyone should be playing the new cards, particularly in the early days. So I'm definitely going to check this deck out whilst no one is running Vengeance and Ruination, because I really want to get the sword off on Taric and onto Riven, and then, you know, just be like, well, good luck, my friend. I can't wait to do that. So yeah, that is Riven Taric, and I am definitely looking forward to playing that one. Okay, here's one. We've moved past the champions now, and here's one that I think, you know, you'll look at and you'll think, what's going on here? Well, this is a card that I was really hyped about seeing as well, and this, I think, is the best way to build it. That is Scargrounds, which is the 3-mana Freljord landmark. When an ally survives damage, grant it 1/0 and tough. So what are we doing? Well, this is a Braum Trundle deck. Now, if you are a subscriber to my channel, and if not, you know, do subscribe. But if you are, then you'll know that I did play a similar kind of thing, a Braum Trundle deck, that I thought was actually pretty decent, kind of a mid-range, you know, sort of list. And I thought, oh, this is actually better than I expected it to be. And then it got Scargrounds, and this, I think, is exactly what it was missing. Like, this is just an extra threat. It makes our units tougher to remove. It's kind of the perfect card for this deck. You know, we already have regeneration, so really, you know, health of the units is kind of fine. And I think this can be really solid. We have some really solid 1-drops. Omen Hawk and Crusty Codger. Obviously, once the Scargrounds comes down, Crusty Codger becomes a 3/2 with tough for 1 mana, so obviously that's pretty good. Shakedown in this deck is MVP, you know, the fact that you can shake down Braum at burst speed, get the Poro, which can often then pick off whatever you've given, you know, vulnerable to, and then, you know, Braum can challenge as well. And obviously, if you've got the Scargrounds down, I mean, that is a nasty turn, right? That is a nasty turn. You think about it, you've played Scargrounds on 3, on turn 4 you play Braum, you're attacking, you go for shakedown, Braum gets tough, he gets 1 attack. You also get the Poro. You've given things vulnerable, so you know you can use the Poro to come and drag those things. Let's say the Poro hits, it gets an attack, it gets tough. You're going in big there. And then you've got your finishers in like Jack the Winner, Trundle, and Skarmother Vrina. Jack the Winner, of course, insane in this deck. Basically 0 mana, deal 2 damage, give your ally tough and 1 attack. Yeah, that's insane, right? And then from then on, it's like give an attack and deal only 1 to it. It's like, that is crazy, right? And obviously Trundle, when he levels up as well, his attack will be going up anyway, of course, from the Behold. And potentially, you know, if he then takes a hit, it's going up even more. And essentially, hard removal is going to be your opponent's only chance. You know, like, the current Ezreal Draven deck would really struggle against this deck, like really struggle. They'd have to draw Noxian Guillotine and kill like 6 units in 1 turn to have a chance. I think that, like, as it's built now, this is insane. And obviously Croaker as well. There's so Ember Maiden, of course, with Scargrounds down, will, you know, deal 1 to everything, give all of your units tough. From then on, you know, won't deal damage to them and be able to survive. I mean, just crazy. And we've got some really good combat tricks like Troll Chant, and even the one of Elixir of Iron. Don't forget, this can be a nice little surprise on people. And then the big Battle Fury at the end, just in case we need it. But Vrina as well is going to be big in this. We've got Avalanche to sort of deal with aggro if we need it. And Tavern Keeper, of course, as well, more healing. And I just think this could be really strong. I'm really excited to play Scargrounds with this. And I think this deck's got a chance. I really do. Of being, you know, a very solid deck, and also, you know, completely different and completely fun as well. So that's my take on Scargrounds. So now looking at a deck that I have called Stony Plaza. What is Stony Plaza? Well, it's the Grand Plaza, the 3-mana Demacian landmark, combined with Stony Suppressor, which I think will be particularly good in this upcoming expansion, because everyone's going to be wanting to play their cheap spells. You know, with Zoe, with Viktor, everyone's going to be, well, what if they all cost 1 more, and we're just running a deck that is almost all comprised of units. The only spells we are running is Sharp Sight and Relentless Pursuit. And we just say to them, you know what? You run your spells. They'll all cost 1 more. We've got Stony Suppressor down. Essentially, you know, any 2-mana card that, you know, you kind of telling your opponent you have to remove this to have a chance. Like, that's a good 2-mana card. We've obviously got some of the usual suspects. We are running Lucian in this. And essentially, the idea is the Grand Plaza is pretty good with quick attack units, because, of course, you give them Challenger and 1/1, and, you know, that's pretty good. I don't need to tell you that that is pretty good. It's also good with stuff like Grizzled Ranger, which, you know, you'll get a 4/2 Challenger with Scout, you'll attack, you'll kill something, you'll get the Badger Bear. It will also become a 4/5 with Challenger because it does summon effect, and this is kind of an aggro deck. And Katarina as well, also pretty nice in that she will obviously have quick attack, have Challenger. Being a 4/3 will make a big difference to Katarina. It makes her harder to remove. She will obviously, hopefully, kill something when she attacks, and then you'll be able to replay her later on, and she will again rally for you and gain the Challenger each time, which means that, you know, you can use the Grand Plaza with Katarina, a very good synergy. So this is kind of the more aggressive thing for this, but I actually don't think that this is where Grand Plaza will be best utilized, and I will explain that just now. So this is the deck that I think the Grand Plaza will actually be the best in the way it's utilized, and that is in an Elites deck. Now, why do I think that this will be somewhat better here? It's because I think Elites as a whole are actually a lot closer to being good than people will have you believe. And this is Elites with Harrowing at the top end. And, you know, I'm saying this before nerfs, so if Harrowing gets nerfed, maybe this won't be as good. Let's hope it doesn't for the sake of this deck, because it would be really cool. But this deck, I think, would be really good because elites were kind of missing a 3-drop anyway. You look at the elite 3-drops, they're not that great. They're kind of like Vanguard Redeemer is one of them, but obviously you want something to die, and you can't reliably have something die on turn 3. Your opponent might just not have the removal in hand. So they were kind of missing like a unit there. They were missing a proactive drop on turn 3. But the Grand Plaza, you could not pick a better thing for elites, because elites also, you know, they don't really have the most removal in the deck. It's not really a removal based deck. You've got single combat, you've got concerted strike, but other than that, you know, you're much more unit focused. Well, this gives all your units challenges, and that is insane for this deck because you have a lot of beefy units. That's the whole point of playing elites. Now you might say, oh Chris, this deck, what are you doing? This, you know, I'll just play Shadow Elves Control and I'll eat this deck alive. Well, you won't, because that's why we've got the Harrowing at the top end. And it's also why we've got For the Fallen. There is an insane thing that you can do, right? Let's assume you got the Grand Plaza down, right? You've got no units on board. It's let's say turn 9, right? You go in for your Harrowing, you're going for your big kill. Of course, you're hoping that this will revive, say, Cytherea the Bold. Also, another great synergy right there is Cytherea will gain Challenger, and so therefore she can drag a Fearsome Blocker. Just another one for you. But let's say you Harrowing, you know, you get all your units, you Cytherea the Bold, whatever. Oh, they got Ruination. Oh, they ruinated you. Oh, no. Oh, game over. They ruinated my Harrowing. Game over. Oh, no. Oh, no. Not oh, no, because then we can go For the Fallen, and this is when you summon an elite. So if, you know, you've got For the Fallen in hand and you see the Harrowing go off, this will reduce the cost by at least 5, and you know, if you've had it in hand before, it'll possibly even cost 0. And so then for 0 mana, you go in, and then you get a board full of Dauntless Vanguards that become 4/4s with Challenger thanks to the Grand Plaza, and then you smack them in the face. You've got 5 4/4s, that's 20 damage right there. They ruinated on you, and they have still lost the game after ruinated your Harrowing, and you just feel amazing. And that is the best thing that you could ever do in this game. And I got very excited there, but I'm pumped for that, and I think that this will be, again, a pretty strong deck. Harrowing is better than you might elites are better than you might think, just because they haven't been good before. Someone brought it to the EU Masters International tournament, and it won for them. I think it was Italy, I want to say. It won for Italy. You know, they did pretty much exactly what I said. They Harrowinged, you know, got a big attack off. Then they went For the Fallen, and their opponent was just like, well, I can't deal with a board full of units again. You know, we just dealt with all the units, and now we've got to deal with a full board again. It's like, this deck has a lot of staying power, and with the Grand Plaza, it'll have a lot of mid-game as well. Okay, this one is a bit crazy. We are building around Targon's Peak. Now, this is a card that I think when people saw it, myself included, was a bit like, oh my god, please be bad. Please let this card be bad. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this card is super competitive. I don't think that it will be the best thing to do in the game. But if we are building a deck around it, which I kind of wanted to do, what does it look like? And I think it looks a bit like this. Essentially, we are running, you know, pretty much all the ramp you can get, and the early survival tools, you know, like Avalanche that you've seen. Starry Sunforger as well, just for the lifesteal. I think very solid drop on turn 4. Especially if you go Faces of the old ones, you get the extra mana. You go into Solari Sunforger turn 3. Like, what does an aggro deck do against, you know, you gaining 5 life, you know, if you've already lost them on turn 3 and you got a 5/4 down on the board? There's not much they're really going to be doing against you. But yeah, all the ramp. You play Targon's Peak, and then, you know, you're hoping that basically any of these cost 0, because if you get these in hand, Voices of the Old Ones in particular, imagine on turn 6, right? You get Voices of the Old Ones to cost 0. You play it. It is empty mana gems, so you don't get the mana gems, but still, you ramp 2 essentially. You're drawing cards, and you're still gonna get to play a card as well. Yeah, obviously Feel the Rush on turn 6 is just game over. Like, it literally would be game over. If you can get Feel the Rush on turn 6. But I think this deck is packing just about enough survival tools to be able to survive long enough, and not even necessarily need Targon's Peak, right? But I do think, you know, you look at the cards that you've got up here, like Tryndamere. Sure, playing Tryndamere on turn 8 feels pretty bad, right? Playing Tryndamere for nothing on turn 6, that feels pretty good because your opponent probably won't have even a half decent option to remove him. So yeah, I think this deck is probably not the best, but funny and exciting, and I'll have to try it out and see what we can do. And finally, a deck that I think, personally, I'm probably most proud of this one because I haven't heard anyone saying anything about it at all. I haven't heard anyone talk about this kind of concept at all, and so I'm pretty proud of this one as a whole. This one's a bit crazy, so stay with me. This is what I'm calling Pesky Aggro, utilizing Pesky Spectre, the 0 mana 1/1 that creates 2 copies in the enemy deck. You might think, what are you doing? Well, what am I doing? I'll tell you what I'm doing. This deck can kill people on turn 3, even if your opponent does things. Normally when you say I can kill you by turn 3, normally you're not doing something. Right, it's like, oh, well, your opponent just has to do nothing. But your opponent can do things, and you can still kill them on turn 3. I'll explain. So you start turn 1, you go Bark Beast, you play Pesky Spectre, then you butcher the Pesky Spectre, and you get 6 damage off, right? That's turn 1. Next turn, you play Cursed Keeper. This is their attacking turn now, so you play Cursed Keeper. Let's say, they drop whatever 2-drop they want, right? Then, on, the next turn, you go in for Blighted Caretaker, and, on the Cursed Keeper, you have a board full of units, and if you drag with one of the saplings and hit with everything else, that's 14 damage. That's lethal on turn 3. Now that, obviously you need the specific combo of cards, and you have used 5 cards. So, is it likely to happen? Probably not. But I don't... Could it happen? Is it that far-fetched? I don't think that's that far-fetched. Your opponent passing on turn 3 with 4 mana up. There are plenty of decks that might do that. And there you go. There's a lethal on turn 3. But otherwise, let's say we don't have the absolute nuts, right? Let's assume we can't kill them by turn 3. What are we doing? Well, essentially, it's actually a Shark Chariot deck. And that might sound weird because people probably think about this card. People might not even know this card. But why am I playing Shark Chariot? What does that do? Well, it means that if you can get Shark Chariot down and even Fading Memories a Shark Chariot multiple times, then every time an ephemeral attacks, obviously, you Shark Chariot them in the face. Now, we are playing Phantom Prankster and Neverglade Collector. We are essentially saying, yeah, our things are going to die 100%, and we're going to burn you in the face with them, and just send a bunch of sharks at you. Now, we're able to do this because of Pesky Spectre, which is going to give them a terrible draw as well, potentially. It's going to ruin one of their draws. There might be a card down. There might be 2 cards down, essentially, if you give them Pesky Spectres. But when we draw one, if they put them back in our deck, we attack with it, and all of a sudden we've got 3 Shark Chariots coming out as well, and we've got a Prankster on the board that's smacking them in the face. Now, we do have some burn tools as well at the top with Decimate and Noxian Fervor as well, but we also get to use Evershade Stalker, because of course, with Phantom Prankster or with Shark Chariots, we can enable Shark Chariots every attacking turn with these Evershade Stalkers because, we use the Nightfall, we keep creating copies of it in hand, and those Shark Chariots will just keep on coming, and it's, it's 2 damage. And say the match goes, really long, and, your opponent is running out of steam, and then, you've just got this hand, you'll need 1 Evershade Stalker, you enable the Nightfall, and then, on turn 8 or whatever it is, your opponent's out of steam, you've got a board full of Evershade Stalkers just smacking them in the face, and you've still got the 1 in hand as well for next time. So it gets to utilize that and just Shark Chariot people to the face, and I think it's a really exciting different deck that I haven't seen anyone else play, and I am so pumped to play this, right? I've kind of been trying it out, without some of the cards, like obviously I can't play Spectre and I can't play Stalker, but trying out the concept, it's not as bad as you would think. It's actually okay as it is anyway, and can beat a lot of decks. Sure, those decks that, if you come up against Avalanche, it's not ideal, but stuff like Shark Chariot kind of deals with that pretty well, because it doesn't matter if your units die. You don't care if your units like Shark Chariot die, and your opponent is never really going to Avalanche a Shark Chariot. So we are more capable of dealing with those kind of things than you would think. And with Fading Memories as well, you can get a lot off in this deck, and you can just smack them in the face. And obviously with like Prankster and Neverglade, you don't really want to attack with them. And Shock Chariot kind of takes up some attacking slots. That obviously can be a problem sometimes, you know, if you've got better units. But we don't have better units. That's our main attacking, and your opponent is basically going to have to trade into these Shark Chariots, and they're going to be dead long before they ever knew what hit them. And of course with Stalking Shadows as well, we've got a unit, you know, I think it would be impossible for Stalking Shadows to not pull a unit. Yeah, it would be statistically almost impossible for Stalking Shadows to not pull a unit here. So, you know, that will give us essentially 2 card draw as well. And of course we don't care about Ephemeral, because most of our units, or a large portion of them, kind of want to die anyway. So yeah, that's the deck. I'm super pumped about this one. So let me know what you guys think, if you're excited for any of these decks. I cannot wait to play this one. I cannot wait to play a lot of decks, to be honest. I'm pumped. And yeah, that's been 7, or technically 8, I think, new decks for you to try out in the new patch. So I'm going to leave you there, and have a nice day, everyone.